Okay, I'm back again at my desktop. At the bottom I have shortcut to GIMP 2.6. Marge, Patty, Hopper told me that she's got 2.8 is the newest version she tried to upload. But if I clip this, it may take a few seconds to upload. This is a big program because it does have some massive graphics features, just like Photoshop. This is what it's going to look like when it comes up, the GIMP startup. It'll take a minute. There's actually two windows that'll appear. There's the tool window and the actual work area. But it will take a second or two depending on your speed of your computer. I'm running XP on this old dinosaur of mine, so it might take a second. And just be patient with it, and it should work pretty quickly for you. See if I can get it to speed up with the task manager. There we go. Alright, this is the screen for GIMP. I'm going to look at the zoom in on these menus at the top. You have File, Edit, Select, View, Image, Layer, Colors, Tools, Filters, Windows, and Help. It's a little more complex than the Paint menu. Typically I'm going to use the File, New, and just basically make a template that I can throw in and start a project with. You pick the size. If you want to work with a large memory or some big photo portrait, I recommend using the drop down to an A4. It will have substantial amount of white space around it if you don't have the portrait as big, but just for this example I'll use that and zoom in. And you hit OK once you've selected the size you want. Alright, I'm going to zoom out, and it's basically added this white border with the dotted lines around it, for that's your workspace. Over on the right hand side you have the toolbar menu, window that I told you about. It's a toolbox that has a lot of special features, and each one will tell you what it is if you hover over it. The ones I use typically are the perspective tool over here. It's this kind of parallelogram that's bending backwards. It says it's a perspective tool to change perspective of the layer, selection, or path, and you can use Shift P shortcut. The other tool I use, which is simple, is the eraser tool. Once I've actually inserted a picture, manipulated it with the perspective, and then dropped another picture on top of it of my subject who's a head-to-toe ancestor that I've cropped, I'll use this eraser tool to get rid of the background and make it look like it was just one contiguous picture, and that the two images belong together. So let's get an example on here. You can drop and drag into the GIMP menus into the actual screen here. So I'm gonna basically go up to the square here and see if I can get a different size. Okay, I'm gonna resize this so I can get to my portraits area. I've got portraits up in the first area here, and I can pick any portrait. I'll take Richard again right here. I'll go to Richard's 3D area again here. Of course, these are his 3D portraits. This is the second thing I'm going to be working with, so I'm going to minimize this, close out these other things. Of course, the first thing I want to drop in is my background. This is important because the layers that they're talking about in the top, you want to build it from your background first. And your background image is the thing that you're going to be putting the farthest back and then inserting other images on top of it, like an ancestor's picture who would be standing as an out of bounds looking image for a 3D effect. Alright, so for this I need to go to the top of my screen and get to my Genedocs Innovative Forms. I'm going to take the hybrid chart. It should be kind of familiar to you all. And I'm going to go to my examples, and I want to take a 2D example. A lot of you are familiar with my dad's chart, so I'm going to use that. And his name is Ray. And I have an angle changes section, but I'm going to use this JPEG here next to it. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see what it is. And we'll see how that goes. Alright, this is what it's going to look like, as everyone's probably seen by now. If you've been a member of Genedocs templates or a friend of enhancements before Facebook changed everything on me. It covers everything from Dad and his sisters, information in their portraits, to his vital certificates, to comments, to pictures of his father and his brothers, pictures of Dad's mother, death certificate, all of her siblings, 7 siblings in all. There's also the death certificate, then the portrait of orientation family, which is Dad, the little boy, his parents, and his 2 sisters, and then our procreation family that he created with Mom and me and my sister, and just the comments about Laverne, a town, what Dad's sister was named, you know, the basic information that I put in a hybrid chart that most people enjoy. Alright, now that's what it looks like. I'm going to have to close it to drag it. So I take this and I want to move it to the side to where I can still see it. I'm going to close these other windows out that I had to get to it until I have the GIMP in the background and this picture here that I want to drag. Okay, to get the view, you go up to the top in XP and you want to go to thumbnail view so you can see the pictures you have. But I click and I drag this over to the GIMP screen and watch what happens. All of a sudden it appears in the GIMP screen, and then you can zoom in with this magnifying glass in GIMP, and it has a zoom in or a zoom out. I'll show you what that looks like. The magnifying glass is up there, and you can zoom in to actually work on the item, and it's just going to grow and grow until it's comfortably something you can see and work with. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit, zoom in a little more. I think that's a pretty good size for me right now, working with the screen. Now you may need to move the toolbox a little bit, that's okay, just to get it out of your way. But you can see pretty much the picture. Once you have it in there, you're going to close this. And I've minimized Richard's 3D at the bottom. You can see this right here, this 3D. I'm going to pull that up next after I change the perspective on this picture. So remember I told you the perspective tool is this one right up here. It's kind of a square that's been bent backwards in space. So it looks like a square that's been cut short on the top or expanded at the bottom. So if I click that, I want to show you what it looks like when I go down to this chart. All of a sudden, when you click on this chart that I've inserted, there's a circle in the middle of it. Okay, there are squares on each corner of the actual chart, and that's your drag points. If you want to move the entire thing, you drag this circle with the crosshairs in the middle. If you want to drag the perspective from the top, you grab these top corners and move them wherever you want to. And I'll show you an example here of what I would do. I grab the top, I start moving it in, and it changes as you move it. It's real-time change. And let's say I want to bring it down a little bit too. And I'm going to have to move this toolbox over so I can reach that corner over there. And I'm going to drag that corner down, and you can see the perspective changing. Okay, and once you've changed it, there's another box that appeared up top, and I want to show you this close up. It's the perspective box, and it's going to say transform is the main thing you're looking at. It gives you a lot of numbers on the changes that you've made. You don't really have to pay too much attention unless you're a programmer or looking for really specific dimensions. But the key thing is once you get it to what you what it looks like inside, and it still has the original view there. You hit the transform button, and I want to show you what it looks like when we do that. I go up to transform, and it changes. Now there's no longer the old image of what it looked like. It's resized it, reshaped it, and I'll move the toolbox so you can see. So that looks a little bit more like what you guys are used to seeing on the 3D view. Now, this is a little bit less zoomed in than what I normally have, so I might go and, don't forget you can use the magnifying glass and zoom in a little more if you want to. And until you get comfortable with what size you have it, feel free to move it around on the screen, adjust your corners of your window with it. Now this is the point where I'm going to drop in Richard, okay? And remember, I've got him minimized at the bottom of the screen. I'll have to drag down here. Right there. Once I click Richard, all of his pictures are going to appear. Now I need to find the one with his shadow, and I need to find the fully cropped version. Now I have some salutes at the bottom here, and I can put one of those in. That's not bad. Here's a JPEG. So I know the picture I want. Now I just have to reduce the screen so I can drag that picture into the GIMP image and show you what it does. So I'm going to move this down, drag down to that. Now you can see both. I have the GIMP image in the background, and I'm clicking this JPEG of Richard, and I'm putting him in here. Alright, so then he pops up. He's on top of the chart, but he's not where he usually is, and he's kind of big. Now this is where it comes into play, the actual dimensions. You want it to look realistic. He's a little bit bigger than I would want him, so I would go over and adjust the perspective tool, and this is where you can click and drag him with that crosshair bar in the middle, that circle with the crosshairs. You just click in there and drag and hold wherever you want him, and again it shows you where he was and where you're placing him. And put him up top. That looks alright. I'm going to put him a little lower. I like to keep all four corners available before I transform it. Now this is a little bit bigger than what Richard looks like, but it's not too bad. It gives you the idea that he's more of an action figure doll size to this chart perspective. But I do want to show you how to change him too. So I'm going back to the perspective tool. I'll click him again, and if I want to make him smaller, I'm going to have to change where this is, this perspective box. Once I can see all four of those, I can just drag it down the corners and resize him. And you want to make sure these are perfectly straight as much as possible. When you do change an individual's portrait, you want to make it as square as possible that you can. And it's hard for me to do it looking through the video camera, but I think I've got it. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to hit transform and see how that looks. That's not too bad. Now I've noticed that Richard is actually not standing on his own portrait, which is where I like him. So I'm going to click that center crosshairs with the circle, adjust him, hit transform again. He's right on top of it. Now this is the final step, and it's kind of neat effect to be able to do it. I told you all about the erase button, or the tool up here. It's kind of a pink or red 3D parallelogram. You click and grab that. Now there's sizes that you can adjust for it, and you can adjust the opacity, which is basically how much you're going to be erasing, if you want to erase faintly or you want to erase completely. I leave it at 100 because I want to erase everything. And what you're doing is erasing this top layer of what's in the square, the dashed line square, and that allows you to see what's behind it on the chart. And I'm going to increase the brush size a little bit, so I'm going to zoom in and show you how to do that, because I like having my brush size a little bit bigger. And the scale is where you do that. You can do it with the up arrow or drag on the scale, but you don't want to do it too high. Prefer to have it around 2 or 3 maybe. Let's see, and you can see the circle's gotten bigger. So if I want to get rid of some of the space here that's white on his picture and show what's behind it, I have to zoom in and show you how this works. If you click once you pick a white area, you click on it, you can see there images from the background are appearing as I click, and they're clicking by his shadow. And if you just go around the edge of his shadow in the white areas, you can see some of the stuff. Now I made a mistake, but then remember there's always the edit undo. So I'm going to go up and click the edit undo for that last, and it got rid of that fix there for me that I overdid. Alright, so anything that you want to see the background on, you just have to click on it in the white areas. Now there may not be a lot of stuff. This kind of is a reduced area of activity back there, so there isn't a whole lot going on. It's just a few things from the comments apparently, but like I just clicked one area and it shows a little bit of his picture below him. I like having that, so I'm going to keep clicking around his boots to add some of that effect of his image. And I may have to change the size of this so I don't erase his feet, because anything you touch that is in the foreground image, if you click on it, it might just erase everything in that area, and we want to keep as much of that as possible. Alright, so I need a smaller brush size, so I'm going to go over and adjust this circle down a little bit from the 2.61 that I set it at, and I'm thinking about a 1 might do pretty good to take care of between his feet. That's not the one I was looking for. Okay, and sometimes the scroll bar is just a little quicker. There we go. Alright, now I go back over. You can see the circle is much smaller. I can do it between his legs and the shadow and get these little areas in here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you to see. Alright. And I'm just adding those comments in the background because they show up on the chart pretty well. Also between his feet, that portrait of him that I placed him on top of, you can kind of click around there and see what shows up. But be careful not to click on any of the solid areas from the portrait above. But anyway, you can see the effect that has right there. And once you're done, you can of course go up and do the saving option at that point. And you'll go to File, and there's a Save As option. And in the Save As, you're going to have the name usually. You need to pick a folder that you want it to go into. There's a lot of spots on your computer that you can save to. Many people save to My Pictures, but unless your C drive's really vacant of memory to be filling up, you may want to save it to a flash drive or somewhere else where you have plenty of memory. I have a secondary drive, the F drive, that I save a lot of things to. I'll put this one in My Pictures, and just to show you what it's like, and I'll say sample (3D) Richard. And I'll put in video. I do type faster, but this is one-armed work here. That's going into My Pictures. This is going to be a huge file, so I'm going to have to crop it also. It's probably going to be a bitmap as well. If you can control what you want it saved as, I'm going to save it as a .jpeg. If you put .dot and JPG, it will save it as a smaller file so it doesn't take up as much space. If you want the detail, you save it as a bitmap, but if you're going to put it in Facebook, make sure it's a JPEG until Zuckerberg and his crew decide to allow us to do bitmaps. I click save, then an export file window comes up and it's asking, it should be exported before it can be saved as a JPEG. The plug can't handle transparency. It's talking about two images on top of each other and wants to flatten the image. You go ahead and say export, and then it's going to offer another save option, and you can adjust the quality if you want. If you want higher quality, you raise it up. If you want it lower quality, closer to JPEG, closer to bitmap, depending on left or right, how much you want. There's also defaults and advanced options. I don't usually use those. I just hit save. The save screen comes up, you get green all across the board, and there it is. And I want to show you what this looks like after I close out of these windows. I'll go to my pictures area. Once I close either one of those GIMP toolbar or the actual work screen window, you got to understand that they'll both close. I've also got Richard's file open down here, so I'm closing that for his 3D. And to get to my pictures, I have a shortcut to that as well on my desktop, which is always handy. Alright, let me see where I have this. I'm going to sort this. I have quite a few pictures here. I'm going to sort it by date. If you go from details and go by date modified, the first thing up there is the sample picture. I sort it by the date modified for today's date. Sample 3D Richard video. If I open that up, I can open it with Windows Picture and Effects and take a look at it, and you'll notice this is really small on my screen. All that area inside the big square is extra memory space you don't even need. So there's a way to crop it, and I want to share that as well. I'm going to close it up in the upper right hand corner. I'm going to open it again, but this time I'm going to open with, so you can see this, Microsoft Office Picture Manager. This has a cropping tool in it that you can crop the picture down to a regular size, and I'll show you how to get to that. Here it is again. It's very small, but to get it to be a bigger, more manageable size, you want to picture it, or more viewable size. Crop is the third option. And when you select crop, you'll see these squares. The border appeared for this. This is the actual size of the image. And you can click and drag these. I'll drag the top down to above Richard. I'll grab the bottom and drag it up to the bottom of the chart. I can drag the left over to the left hand side of the chart. Get rid of all that white space around the perimeter. And I just moved something. Okay, let's try this again. You can also zoom in at the bottom. There's a zoom dragger, so you can see what you're doing once you crop the smaller parts. But you don't want to crop anything that actually has detail in it, obviously. So I go just above Richard's head. I'm going to zoom in and see if we've got the actual chart. Looks like I've cropped past the chart corner. So if you do that, that's fine. Until you hit this OK button, you're still just playing with it to adjust what you want. You can see how it goes transparent if I drag too far. So I'm going to drag this back outside of that corner, and then I'm going to hit OK. And once you hit OK, it doesn't mean it's saved, it just means you decided that's what you want. And it looks pretty good now. It's much bigger, much more viewable. I'm going to say File, Save As. I want to verify the name. If I want to change the name and keep the original, this is where I'd change the name by adding a 1 to something else. It's a JPEG, it's the same name. I want to keep it because I want to get rid of all that blank space. So I hit save. It asks me, hey, you've got one of these already. Do you want to replace it? Yes, I do. Alright. Then I close out of it, and I want to view the exact same file with the Windows Picture and Fax Viewer. Now, instead of being a tiny little picture, it's actually a sizable, good looking picture with Richard saluting up on top of the chart where his portrait normally stands. or rests. He's standing on top of it. The shadow looks good. It's actually over the comments. There's a few small areas I missed, but from a distance this looks like a pretty impressive picture. I hope this helps you guys learn how to do the same thing. Microsoft Paint's easy to use. GIMP isn't too hard to learn obviously. I've only used 3 or 4 tools with it, of a wide array of, you know, probably about 20 or 25 things that you can start off using in more advanced complexity. But you don't really need to learn a whole lot to actually put this effect to work on a chart or a picture. You can put a vital certificate underneath here and paste an ancestor on there and do that erasing and make it look like it was just like the ancestor just stepped off the page and wanted to say hello. I like to have the effect of you know, action. That's why I chose to edit this picture with Richard saluting. It's always nice to have them doing something in the picture that it catches more attention from the eye of the viewer. So I hope this helps, and we'll see if I can get this on Facebook for the Genedocs templates group, and thank you for suggesting it. I'm a little video challenged, but I need to improve on my skills here too, so I appreciate the opportunity. Eric Jelly, the founder of Genedocs, signing off. Thank you.